rookie mistake.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
I don't wear boxers or anything.
I got to
I'm
wear
fucking
pants
commando.
at least
Wait,
once.
you don't wear boxers?
I don't wear nothing.
So you did shit right in the
gosh.
jeans.
Yeah, it went fucking right through.
Oh, Christ.
I've never done that in my fucking life, and it was 40 minutes before I was going on stage, and I was like, "What the fuck am I gonna do?" And then I had to wear Rocha's pants.
Oh,
and
my
he had-
God.
That's the whole story.
Was it a fucking Slim Fast
They
commercial?
actually did not. They actually fit reasonably well. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. They were a little wider in the waist, but it was like they weren't. Like if you look at pictures of me on stage, no one noticed. No one said anything.
does
They were
wear
like,
pretty
You know,
tight pants.
Rocha's got a little waist. He
yeah,
does.
it's not that bad.
He's got a little like Daniel Cormier waist.
And I'm taller than him,
He's
but
got the lower body of a decently in shape
They
man.
fit
Yeah.
all right. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy shit. He was all offended. He's like, fuck you. Why wouldn't they fit? I'm like, we're different body shapes.
Yeah.
Because you're big.
He's your
Plus, I'm
Rocha's.
just way taller than him too.
That's too. Yeah. He has little legs.
Yeah, he's got just terrible genetics. I mean, he's just a fucking.
Short, fat,
He's gonna fucking kill me.
gay.
Fuck guys.
That was a clip from Going Nowhere Fast. That's those are my three buddies, Vinny, Pat, and Luke. Yeah, go check out their podcast. You can get it anywhere where a shitty podcasts like theirs are gotten. I'm making a list, and these three shitheels just made it on there.
You goddamn guineas really make me laugh.
No, seriously, go check out their podcast. It's fun. You can hear Vinny tell a really long story with no solid ending. Or if that's not to your liking, you can marvel at how Pat Colicchio has a giant penis, yet for some reason women still don't want it. I know that sounds really hateful, but I actually really love all three of those guys.
I don't like your kind of people. I don't like to see you come out to this clean country in oily hair. I despise your masquerade, the dishonest way you pose yourself and your whole fucking family.
Going Nowhere Fast, folks. Go check it out. Anyways, my guest today is the co-head of the acting department at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, and he so happens to be the first acting teacher I had when I moved out here to California. You know, we always hit it off, and I'm really lucky in that, like, the really solid acting teachers that I had, I always got along great with them. I've had like beers with pretty much all the real acting teachers I've respected. It's crazy, but I mean, the guy went to Yale. That's pretty fascinating. I remember my audition at Yale. It was terrible. Not only did I not get into Yale, but I auditioned in New Haven, and when I was in the taxi on the ride home, because I'd known right away I wasn't going to get in. So I'm in the taxi cab, and it was a really bright sunny day, but there was still snow on the ground. And I had the window down, and I was kind of just sulking and feeling sorry for myself. When we're driving back to the train station, and three of these kids had made snowballs, and they just pegged the taxi cab that I was in. And I remember the taxi cab driver ran outside and he's like, "You little shits, you black little shits." And they were like, "Fuck you." And I mean, it was just so terrible. And they're still throwing snowballs at him because they were like ready. They were ready for him to jump out and yell at him. And I was like, "Will you get in the fucking cab?" Because then they started aiming for me because my window was down. We get on the train, and it's so funny because on that train back to New York, from New Haven to New York, it's just kids that didn't get into Yale. And if you were quiet, you could just hear sobbing. Just oh, it was so fucking miserable. So anyways, unlike me, Bill Mesnik made it into Yale. And what I love about this episode is I talk with Bill about what it was like teaching and just some of the really great things that I always loved about Bill really come out of this episode. And just going back to my old school was crazy too. 'Cause it's bigger now, but you know, when I was there, classes were smaller and it was just, I don't know, getting older, man. Anyways, go to BillMesnik.com. That will give you links to all of Bill's stuff. check out some of his plays. I really loved his plays. And also check out his podcast, strangerintown.podcastpeople.com. So again, that's Bill Mesnik. Mesnik is MESNIK, BillMesnik.com. And check out strangerintown.podcastpeople.com. So without further ado, here's my friend and my old professor, Bill Mesnik.
I don't know no better, so let's blame the weather, 'cause I got no care when I hit my groove. 'Cause I got no care when I hit my groove.
I moved here, not when I was a student, but when I first moved to LA, not as a student, it was in November, I believe, and Christmas came around, and I had literally nowhere to go Christmas night. It was actually Christmas Eve, and you invited me to your place, and I remember what was so funny was I was playing with a dreidel on Christmas Eve, and I started laughing because I go, I've never played with a dreidel. How do you do this?
Did we teach you?
Yeah, it was so funny because I said I've never done this before. This game is amazing.
Yeah. Well, my thing was, religion was forced upon me, and so I had to do the bar mitzvah thing. And from the age of 13 on, I never set foot really inside a synagogue again. But my older son, he's going to be 29.
Really?
So yeah, when I was doing a play called The Dybbuk, which was where I had to play a rabbi and blow the ram's horn, the shofar. So for research, I went to a Rosh Hashanah ceremony in the valley somewhere, and I took my son, who was about 6 or 7 at the time, and he was like fascinated by the ritual, the blowing of the ram's horn and the whole kind of thing, And that's what gets the Catholics too, right? It's all the ritual. So he says to me, and remember, he's 6 or 7. He goes, "That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do." I said, "Okay, that's fine. He'll forget about it. Just keep moving." So time goes on, and when he's about 11, he comes to me and goes, "Dad, when are we going to join a temple?" And I go, You don't want to do that. I said, you don't want to do that. It's really like you got to learn this other language, and you got to go to school 3 days a week, And he goes, "I want to do it." So we go around, we start looking at various, and I'm thinking, he's dragging me back in, right? So and we look around to various synagogues, and finally we go to one in Pasadena that is this luxurious thing. It's got this like basketball court inside, which they convert to a common room, and he goes, "That's the one," right? So, which had like a $5,000 or $6,000 initiation fee.
Yeah, because Jews are known for playing their basketball.
Exactly. So we joined, and he did it in 2 years, from 11 to 13. He mastered the Hebrew. He did the thing, and he's been to Israel twice. I've never been. He's the Jewiest Jew in the family, and his mother is not Jewish. And like I said, I had forgotten all about it. But
that's crazy how it takes, and sometimes it doesn't.
He became obsessed with it, and not only that, at a very young age, he also decided he was a vegetarian. And so for 2 or 3 years, I cooked everything with like fake meat, and
Really?
Yeah, I indulged.
Wow.
I indulged his. His ways of thinking.
I imagine, though, that like there's a very creative and kind of free environment in the Mesnik home.
Yeah, you could. Well, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. I'm very bourgeois. My whole thing was I wanted to be an actor, but I came from a middle-class family. My brother and my father are merchants, and in the retail world, and and I went this totally other way, but I thought that as I could be an artist and be middle class too, and that was kind of one of the things that I always tried to maintain. So in my home life, I'm very staid and kind of.
Well, it's interesting though, because you say you're an artist, you're an actor. I think the difference is not everybody gets into Yale. And I know that because I auditioned and I didn't get into Yale. Which, by the way, thank you for the letter of recommendation.
Yeah, I'm sorry it didn't help.
What was Yale like back then?
It was
Because
great.
you went to the Yale School of Drama.
Yes, it was great. And by the way, I had no teaching ambition. Now, the MFA is the teaching degree. And so luckily, when I decided to switch careers much later, I had that in my back pocket. But at the time, it was, no, I just want to go where the best people are. So, because Meryl Streep had come out of there, and I was reading about the guy at the time who was the dean was Robert Brustein, who then went to Harvard and started the art theater there. Because I was following his work, and it was very political and very playwright oriented, and Chris Durang was there at the time, and some others. And that's where I need to go. I need to go where the best people are, instead of kind of just fooling around. Like, I was working on Broadway at the time when I auditioned. I was doing a show called O Calcutta, which now I display proudly the playbill. But back then, because I had to get naked in the play, and we were playing for Japanese tourists pretty much exclusively, because the show had been running for 10 years. This was in 78, something like that. And so when I auditioned when I got cast in O Calcutta, I thought, well, no, okay, this is not the way I want my career to be going. Even though, if you look back in the history of O Calcutta, it was sort of, avant-garde, sort of. Kenneth Tynan was trying to bring sort of more erotic, explicit stuff to mainstream audiences.
And I mean, to get naked on stage, what is that like?
Well,
especially on Broadway.
Back in those days, I had no problem with it. I would drop my drawers. I had no problem. Now you couldn't pay me enough to do it. It'd be way too humiliating. But then I was all right. So I was sort of okay. I was the character actor. Even then, they gave me the comic bits, and I didn't have to. There were two very brief sections where we were wearing robes, and then we just flash, and then at the end it was sort of like a hair thing where we all dropped our robes and made it a sunflower, kind of thing. So it was, it wasn't risque,
What year was that?
Well, it opened in '69, I believe. This would be the 50th anniversary. But when I did it was 78 to 79. So it had been 10 years since it. So by that time, it had devolved to this Japanese tourist thing, and they would all sit with their programs in front of their mouths when they laughed. It was odd. But anyway, so Yale, I thought, okay, I'm just going to take a flyer here. I don't want my career to go in this direction. So I said, I auditioned for Yale, and I thought, this will be great. I'll do a year, because this was in January, February, and you audition, and for the following September. So I thought, okay, I'll work for 9 months, save up money, and then I'll go. And that's what I did. And I actually wrote a play, my first play during that summer. In preparation for going to Yale, I thought, wow, let me create something, like have it, So I did a one-man show based on Hunter S. Thompson.
Really?
Yeah. And I took the research very seriously. It was based on the night that he had to revise his, he had written a piece about Nixon's downfall, but then Ford pardoned Nixon. So he had to revise the piece overnight. And so he just tanked himself up on drugs and just rewrote. And so I did it. When I went to Yale, I tried to get somebody to direct it in the cabaret. We did it in the cabaret. And a couple of people turned it down. But this great director, Jim Simpson, who runs the Flea Theater now in New York, and he's married to Sigourney Weaver, he was like, yeah, I'll do it, and we had the best time. It was a great success. And
it's funny because I remember peppered in your life, I mean, you were the real deal in terms of acting, because just hearing stories about, like, you're like, oh yeah, I remember I went to school with, I think it was Frances McDermott, and
Yeah, she was in my class.
she was wild, she was fun, and I remember laughing, and it was like, oh wow, like just learning about,
She's an icon now.
yeah, learning all of that different stuff. But and then because we were in your garage, if you remember that Christmas Eve, and I started going through all of these different pieces that you had, and it wasn't only just things you had performed in, but things you had actually written, and it was like a den of creativity. I absolutely fucking loved it, because it was like you could be in here a week and only touch
I had
the
often
left
done
side.
that.
So
My wife actually built that office for me.
really,
She's a contractor, and she's because the house was kind of small. She found a way. She put up some wall board and strung the electricity, and so I had a phone line, I had electricity, and so I worked a lot out of that.
I gotta ask this because people are gonna punch me in the face if I don't. Okay, so who was in your class at Yale? It was Francis, and then do you remember everybody?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because they weren't large classes. Yale
No.
didn't take a lot of people.
I think we had to be 12 to 14, something like that. Some prominent people came out of that. Jane Kaczmarek, who, Malcolm in the Middle and all that. And there's a married couple, Melissa Smith and David Keith. She runs the acting program at ACT, and they live in San Francisco, and he works a lot there. And Rob Brown, who works all the time. He was just in the Maidens, what's that? The Maidens, the one that's on Hulu.
Oh,
The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay, Handmaid's Tale.
Right. So, yeah.
And why I go back to a company, I believe this fundamentally. I don't think you can teach acting, but I think one of the things that I learned here was we were a company. And we were a company, and we could learn as we were doing it. Because you were never somebody that said, I'm going to sit down and teach you how to act. And I'm not going to razz on anybody. That's not why I have you on the guest. There were other people that were. What your process was like was, I'm going to throw a piece of material at you, and I want to see what you do with it.
Yeah.
And to me, that was like, oh, okay. Not to say that acting can't be taught. I believe it, but I think it can be learned. And I mean, that's an old question, and I have to ask you that question. Do you think acting can be taught?
See, that goes to the heart of, and I'm glad that you said what you said, because yes, I believe that you have to learn by doing. And so that was as much as possible, exactly what you said. I would say, okay, figure this one out, and you learn. And the classroom can only go so far, right? So you have to get up in front of people, which you're learning in your stand-up life. Mm-hmm. And that's where you really hone your craft, right? By getting up in front of people and doing, if you're working professionally as an actor on the stage, you're working 8 shows a week, and you have to give the same level of performance 8 times a week, and you don't feel like it 2/3 of the time. And after you've done something for a month or more, then you really kind of like, it takes a superhuman effort to have interest and excitement every performance, So you sort of have to develop this technique of finding the inspiration within yourself in order to fill it with, that excitement every time. And that's a challenge. That goes beyond the actual, fantastic moment you may have in discovery in a classroom or a rehearsal. The job it's a job.
Still a job.
It's a job.
Exactly.
And you get paid for it, and that's why I'm totally a union guy, because I believe that you will be exploited, because people will act for nothing. They will, they'll act for their own delusional reasons, glory and, therapy and all this stuff. But if you're working a job, then that's a whole other level of mastery.
You told me something once, and it was probably the most true thing anybody's told me in my career when I was doing acting. You pulled me aside and you said, "You're good, but you're not going to work for a long time." And I kind of looked at you, and I had respected you the first day that I met you because I was throwing out names, and this is the pretentious asshole I was I had come from New York, and at that time L.A. was the big evil, right? It was, if you went to L.A., it was because you were trying to
sell out.
Yeah, pathetic. Like I said, I beat my old self with this mic stand, but. One of the things is I really respected you because you knew a tremendous amount about all these playwrights, and honestly, acting as a craft and as a technique and things you could actually hang on and be like, okay, I just don't fucking have it today. And you taught us techniques. Okay, yeah, you're not the first person to feel that way. Say, try this. But one of the things that you had told me was you said, you're good, but you're not going to work for a while. And you said, because you're going to grow into your look. And he said, it's the character actor's dilemma. Mm-hmm. And it was so true, though. Yeah. And you said,
you're ready now, though.
Exactly. And what you told me was, you said, learn to do something other than just acting. And it was funny because at the time, I don't know if you're ready to learn things at a particular time. And that, as a teacher, which you are one of the best I've ever had, I can remember thinking in my head, like, how the fuck can he say that? Now I look at it and I'm like, holy fuck, he was right. I mean, it was dead on. When did you go from actor to teacher?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, teaching was the very last thing on my mind, and I actually looked at teaching as an admission of failure. What you do if you can't make it, and so for me, it was almost a badge of honor to avoid it at all costs, which I managed to do for 30 years. But here's the secret that I didn't realize is that I love it. It's more creative than the acting experience had become for me. And it's every day is my mind is much more engaged. My heart, my spirit, all those things are engaged. I find it's just amazingly satisfying. Whereas that was the big surprise. The reason that I started was I have two children. One, as I said, who's going to be 29, and one who's 17. And
wow,
with the same wife,
yeah.
Same wife. And so we had 11 years between our two children. And she always said, we got to have another one, we got to have another one. And I was like, well, let's just wait until we're more stable, blah, blah, blah. And then time goes by and you realize that, oh, okay, this is it. So if we're going to do it, we got to do it. So we did it. And she always said, well, I have two only children, which is kind of true.
Little venom in that.
They are totally different. But, and for me, so we've always had, like, for a while we had two children or more because my nephew was living with us. But mostly it's been one and one, and so the older one's been out of the house for 10 years. But when we got pregnant the second time, and I was approaching 50, I said, because one of the things about living the actor's life is it's feast or famine, right? So you have a good year, you make a lot of money, but you spend money, and then the next year when you got to pay the taxes on the money that you made, you don't have any money left, and then you're, counting pennies and coupons. So it's like I that roller coaster financially, that stressful thing of going, will I be able to make my nut this month?
Yeah.
Don't know, you know? So I didn't want that. So I said, okay, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a job so you can be home with the baby. Because the first one, we were in New York, and I was in my 30s, about your age. You're in your 30s, right? And I used to take the baby in a backpack and get on the subway and go to auditions. And, you know, I mean, I was like full of piss and vinegar. At 50, I was like, I've been in L.A. for a while.
Wait, but would you audition with the baby?
Yeah. As a matter
Really?
of fact, there's a great story. There's a great story. Like, this baby was so beautiful. He was just great. And he, you know, so one time, this was a commercial audition. I went in, and the backpack had a little stand you would pull out and sit him up, you know. He'd be sitting in his little seat. And so I was sitting out in the waiting room. This is probably child abuse, but I said to this guy sitting next to me, I said, I'll be right out. Just watch the baby. So I go in, I do the audition.
And you didn't know this guy was just a regular?
He was an actor sitting, waiting to go in, right? So I said, I'll be right out. So I come out. I said, thank you. I put the baby back on my back. I go. Years later, we're in Los Angeles, go to a party. This guy comes up to me and goes, hey, how's Jasper? My kid's name is Jasper. I go, how do you know my son's name? He goes, let me tell you a story. You came in, you did an audition. While you were in the room, this woman came in and she said to me, you must be a really nice man to have such a beautiful baby. And that woman now is my wife, or became my wife.
Oh,
right?
my gosh.
So I said, Jasper brought you together, right? I said, how you guys?
Holy
he said, we're
cow.
broken up now. You know, but that, you
That
know.
is insane.
But that was the energy that, you know, I mean, you
Yeah.
were running around New York subways and all that.
I think if there was any question about your legitimacy or whether your street credentials are solid, I mean, you're taking babies to auditions. That's pretty fucking
Well, you know,
hardcore.
I was all about getting the next audition, booking the job, you know. There's nothing, you know, you get actors, a lot of actors, myself included, can tend to be lazy. And when you get that mailbox money, I mean, that's really sweet.
Well, especially when you need it too, because I think that creates some necessity. Like, okay, I've got to book a job, especially if I have a child.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So then,
But anyway, so at 50, I said I'll get a job. And I went on Craigslist.
really,
And there's this organization called AmeriCorps that helps pay for they contribute to paying your student loans and stuff. And I actually still had a little bit left over my student loan, so I looked in AmeriCorps, and there was this. They were looking for an acting teacher in Glendale Community College, where I would live just up the road.
wow.
So I had to go to this mass audition thing, and it was all these young women from Glendale Community College and me, right? And there was like 50 of them, and we were all in a big room. And the job was, they were hiring people to go into Los Angeles, LA Unified primary schools and encourage reading by doing little theater games and making plays out of the books. So I knew theater games, so I went there, and the audition at Glendale Community College was they broke us up into little pods, like of 4 or 5 people each, and we would do improvs and play theater games. So I thought, there's no way in hell I'm going to get this job. All these women are like in their early 20s, and I'm their father coming in. But the next day I got a call from the woman running the program. She goes, we would like you to be the head of the program and supervise all the other teachers. And so So I did that. That was my first acting.
I was gonna say
Teaching job.
The thing of it though is how many of those people had in their back pocket an MFA from Yale, Bill?
Yeah, but that really didn't. Well, I guess it did influence to some extent, but I think it was just a lucky kind of break in the fact that I had the skills to be able to,
And I guess that's the part that I think we're glossing over, because I will say this too. God, there's so many different directions I want to go with you. You talked about creativity as a teacher, and I didn't understand that when I was in New York. You made me understand it here, because if you remember, we did the Laramie Project.
Yes, you were good in that.
Thank you, man. And I remember just the staging of the Laramie Project.
That was fun.
So unique, and that to me, because I remember we got rave compliments about Laramie Project, and
we had the audience sitting among the actors.
Absolutely, and it was theater in the round essentially, because I remember you said that we're gonna set it up like it's a town hall meeting, and we have to discuss this thing that just happened in Laramie, Wyoming. And then you had the play space, and you said this is going to be the hot seat, where if somebody has something to say, it's going to be here. And then I remember before the show had even started, we would sit in the audience
as they were coming in.
Absolutely, and we had to have discussions with them to kind of pull them into the town. And I can remember, we were getting rave reviews for this, and I remember thinking, 50% of that is the staging, is because it even more so, because it gave a buzz in the room. Because right when you walked in, I just remember feeling this kind of heaviness. It's funny because Apocalypse Now is playing at the ArcLight, and I remember sitting down, and immediately when you start watching that movie, you feel you're watching something you're going into something. And with Laramie Project, I can remember walking in and just feeling, okay, it's time to go there. But that's staging though. That's setting it up.
Yeah.
And as a teacher,
that was fun.
As a teacher, it's like, you had designed it, and I remember you were setting up okay, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this, and then let's try this. Let's see where this goes. And I laugh because I always say this. Mike Nichols, I always heard, would suggest things, and he never gave outright direction, I want you to go here and do that. It was what if you went to him and you did that? And it was interesting because you would nudge people in a direction. You never gave I want you to go. Sometimes you'd be cross here and grab this, but it was very what it needs something. And it was amazing as a director because you would say, it needs something. And I think you knew exactly what the fuck you wanted us to do.
Sometimes.
But it was always our idea, or you made us think it was our idea.
That's good.
So,
yeah, that was the other thing in terms of that I love about teaching is I had never really directed before. So now I'm directing frequently. As a matter of fact, we have something this weekend coming up called Toxic Shocks, which is the black box, and it's a whole new format for the black box where the students generate the subject matter, and so there's going to be there's some heavy stuff going on.
I remember we did something like that. It was called Blurred.
Yeah,
if you remember. And I'll be danged.
That's one of my proudest moments, right? Where I got to be a mad scientist and do all this weird stuff. And you guys, your class was just great. I just saw last weekend. I ran into Weston at the and Christina, his wife, at the Nordstrom Rack. He's doing great. He's working. He's got an executive position now with Disney.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I could have figured that, but I remember that.
He hated that.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
Hated it. And I had to go talk to him. I sought him out. He was working in the little swag store, and I said, listen, I respect that you don't think that this is, anything, but don't fuck up the morale.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought he was a prick during that production.
Yeah, no, he was. But we ended up respecting each other. He did a really great job on Bomb in Gilead.
Yeah, exactly. And that was another thing that oh my gosh, he directed. I remember I auditioned for a part in that.
You didn't want to be in. I was offering you the part. You've turned it down.
And I remember, though, because it was, what the hell was going on? I think it was Irish. I was trying to do the Irish dialect, and every week it was getting worse. And I was like, I can't do this. And then because I had this idea for that character.
Yeah, but there was nothing specified that he had to be Irish.
No. This was for
Deborah.
The voice production speech teacher. And I knew if I committed to that, I was going to be shitty in everything else. Because it was something, I still don't have that discipline. It's one of my bigger regrets. Is it's just like, I should have taken that. And I think a big part of me was scared,
That was a great show.
Oh, you guys had built a production from the ground up, quite literally, like construction and everything.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was amazing. You guys even had online promotions, trailers, I remember seeing for it.
Phil Garcia made
Yeah. So just being able to create, quite literally, something from the ground up.
That's what keeps me here.
That's fascinating, though. And especially in your long reign of because I'm looking at your office right now and I'm just seeing these framed playbills and like different things from your shows and all of that. What is the biggest challenge you see with new actors?
It's hard to generalize, but I would say that I think the climate, the opportunities, especially here, we're in Hollywood, so everything is oriented toward Netflix and stuff like that. But they think, a lot of them think they can bypass the stagecraft and go directly to, stardom. But that's classic. It's always been that way. But now even more out here in Hollywood and the proliferation of streaming and web series and all this stuff. I mean, this having to get through school is just a pain in the ass to them. They just want to start going.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, you were a student at heart. You liked being a student.
Yeah, it was one place we could fail.
Yeah, I think that's a small percentage of our population.
Wow. What do you think caused that then? Just Netflix streaming, the big do it right away, or the immediacy?
Yeah, and I think, like I say, that's a common thing. I mean, when I was young, when I was a teenager, I toyed with the idea of starting right out of high school. But, like I said, I came from a fairly middle-class conservative family, so college was never a question. I just went to college, and I went to the University of Iowa because my English teacher said that's where you should go because she knew I was interested in writing, and she said that's where the writer's workshop is, and that changed the course of my life. So I started to enjoy being a student when I was there.
Could you always act?
Yeah, oh yeah. I started performing when I was 9 or 10, professionally.
Jeez.
Yeah, my parents gave me. My parents used to trot me out when they had parties to do songs and shit, and then I had my mother gave me piano lessons, and the piano teacher said, you're not that promising there, but he said, why don't we try singing? And he gave me two albums. One was Elvis Presley Blue Hawaii, and the other was the Al Jolson Story. And Presley did nothing for me. I
Really?
Yeah, but Al Jolson, I just really responded to, and I learned all the songs by heart. And then he said, you know what? I want to be your manager. And he started booking me in various venues around the city. I grew up in the New York area. And I would do an Al Jolson act when I was like 8, 9, 10.
Wow. And constant listeners, if you get a chance, they have clips of it on YouTube. Obviously, everything's on YouTube. But that Sunny Boy, is that the name of the song?
Yeah.
You can hear every bit of emotion
Oh,
in that song and in his voice. And like, I remember when I finally saw him act it. And it's dated, but it's so heartbreaking.
He was amazing. But, I mean, it's hard to discuss Jolson now because of the whole blackface thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, he was the biggest star of his generation.
How has that been navigated? I mean, obviously, times are different even from when I was in school. Now, what are the classes like just in terms of climate and plays? And, I mean, can you do plays as willingly as you used to?
Well, I would say that the school has grown so much. When you were here, it was the Wild West. It was like we were just making it up, And you talked about the class as a company, and that was my initial response to this transition that was taking place. And so I worked you guys like constantly. We did that year that we did the Laramie Project. We also did God's Country. No,
we did. There was a whole slew of things.
Yeah, we did like a number of things. Comedy of Errors, Gint.
You did. I remember you put me in, and holy shit, I owe you a wrist slap for this. You put me in Richard III, the famous Lady Anne, wooing Lady Anne scene.
Was that Shakespeare class or directing class?
That was directing.
And Carrie Honeycutt directed.
You remembered that,
I do remember. I remember how you whined and struggled.
I was hoping you forgot that.
But you loved Shakespeare. That was the thing that, I respected tremendously about you. You had such love for the language, and you wanted to be good at it. And so I gave you that opportunity, and you said, I can't do this.
It was fucking hard. I was like, how the fuck am I going to woo her when the dead body's right there? And I remember you looked at me and you would laugh and you go, I'm not your director.
That's the
she
scene.
Is.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I think the two of you frustrated each other.
Oh, God, yeah. It was exhausting, like, working with me. And I knew I was the problem. I was like, I can't fucking do this. How do you teach in kind of a rocky climate with this Me Too and with race and with, because you got to be careful whenever you talk about any of this stuff.
Sure.
How do you teach under that?
Well, we're all learning. I mean, it's there's no set answer to that question. I mean, there's lots of things going on currently, and we're constantly adjusting. There's casting, for example.
That's got to be tough.
Well, with gender fluidity and people designating themselves as they, or a person in transition, and they want to play parts, that back in the old days we go, well, your type, right? You're talking about your type. Well, the whole concept of the type is now under question, and it's changing, and so that means a lot of the material that we've been dealing with traditionally, I wouldn't say it's ready to be jettisoned, but we need new material that will accommodate people that are not traditional.
And that's interesting because I think that helps and I think that hurts, to be honest. And like I said, I know you can only say so much about it, but I'll be very honest. I'm gay, and there's some things where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like, I don't see Richard II as a gay character, and I don't like it when he's played as a too effeminate instead of more shy and and unwilling to do what he needs to do.
But even you are now older than than
He
the
just called me out, yeah.
than the kids that are coming in. So the orientation is shifting. You're almost, you're in your spot in terms of received values and things like that, and I was, for me, it was like I lost my hair when I was 19, so I had to struggle with wanting to play romantic leads and never being given a chance to do that. And then my parents got me an expensive toupee when I graduated, and I wore it for about a couple of months, and I just said, I can't do this. This is just not.
Really?
It's too much work. It's not me. I feel like a phony,
Yeah.
So I just had to kind of carve my own way, and luckily, thanks to my music, I was able to attract people, and have a healthy sex life, because I was terrified that I wouldn't, because I thought nobody's going to want to,
But what's interesting is, especially,
But that's a prejudice against bald guys.
yeah.
Right?
Seriously,
See what I'm
though,
saying? We all have something.
that's true. You came up in a time, though, like, what did you say, 78, 79?
Yeah, I graduated from college in 75.
That's like the mecca for character actors.
Yeah, you mean Pacino, De Niro?
Yeah, but the thing of it is I've seen you act too. I remember you played Mr. Mushnick, and what was so hilarious though was you were hilarious, but I bought it every second.
Were you still here at that? during that time?
I think I was on my way out. I'm not sure. I remember you guys in rehearsals because I would pop my head in. Because, it was on blast. It was like, hey, Mesnik's in. He's going to rehearse that. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And it was one of those situations where it was like, holy shit, like this guy can really act.
That was the only time, really, that I had acted here.
And
I did that as a favor to Michael Sarter, who has since passed away quite a long time ago. But, yeah, it was fun.
How often do you get to act now?
Hardly ever.
Really?
Hardly ever. Yeah.
Do you miss it?
Not as much as you would think. Every once in a while, I get a twinge,
Yeah, you were really fucking good.
And I did it nonstop for 30 years, professionally. So, yeah, you would think, but this has filled such a vacuum that I'm, always busy, always creative, taking a lot of inspiration and joy from, you guys and the directing and all that stuff. So occasionally, if someone came to me, like if you were working on a project and you wanted me to do it, and I didn't have to audition, and you knew exactly,
Which hopefully someday will happen.
I would do it. I would do it for the fun of it, But I'm not in the marketplace trying to, cobble together a living.
I remember too, because we investigated this thoroughly. Like, I remember you were watching your Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where you played the pharmacist.
Right.
And again, it's one of those parts where you buy it entirely. And what's great about it is I remember seeing that episode not knowing you, and then seeing that episode and
That's right.
laughing.
I did that right before.
And it was like, oh my God, like I didn't see Bill in there. And it was so funny though, because was that an improv-y type?
Yeah, well, that you've heard probably about his method.
Larry David, yeah.
Yeah, and so they give you the basic plot points, but the dialogue is all improvised. But occasionally he'll say, "I need you to say this one thing." It has to be said at one point, and so yeah. So, but it's interesting because I'm not an improv guy. So when I auditioned, I was, even before I went in the room, I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I kind of had some lines in my head that I could go to. But I was kind of free in the audition, and I was actually auditioning with him, and
Really?
I started to push him, like, you know, physically push him, and he loved it. They cast me.
You're pushing Larry David in the audition.
But I didn't really. I mean, I sort of knew. This was before Curb Your Enthusiasm became a hit. This was the first season, and I knew he had been the producer of Seinfeld, but I didn't know that he was a performer. I didn't. He was a stand-up comic, but I had no reference about that. So, it wasn't like I was meeting someone that I was in awe of, you know. And so I just and I was just like, I was just going, and it was working, and I got the job. So then, when I came on set and he was introducing me around, and he was going, "This guy's a genius," blah blah blah, you know. And they set me up, and we're doing the thing, and so I'm thinking, okay, I got to repeat what I did when I auditioned that worked. So I'm trying to, you know, think of funny things to say, and I'm doing it, and it's falling flat, and nobody's like. The director comes up to me and goes, "Just do what you did in the audition." And I go, I don't remember. I don't know what I did. He goes, so I do it again, and then Larry's starting to get tense, right? The producer comes up, the director comes up to me again. He says, "What's wrong? Just do what you did in the audition." And now I'm starting to flop sweat. I'm just like, oh, shit. What did I do? What did I do? So he comes up to me, and he starts yelling at me in my face. He goes, "All right, you want to know what to say? First you say that, then you say that, then you say that, then you say that. Okay." And so then I said, now I thought I was going to get fired. I said, "Okay, no, whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want." So we start over, and so now I'm just basically, you know, playing it straight. And he loves it. Now he's cracking up. He can't get through a take, you know, because every time I look him in the eye, he starts laughing. So then the director comes up to him and he goes, "He loves you. He loves you." He laughs. He never laughs. You know, I found out later he does it all the time, but they were telling me, "He never laughs like that. You know, you're gold." Right? And so we get through the thing, and it's all fine at the end. But it was a psychotic experience. I was like, you know, first he loved me, then he hated me, then he loved me again, you know. But it turned out fine.
God, is that like a character actor's journey or just an actor's journey? Cause
it's a horrible life. It's a horrible life. If you're the guest star actor, you know, it's very rare that you're treated cordially.
Oh my gosh. For you, how do you do that as a character actor though? Because I think obviously character actors are 10 times the actors that a lot of lead actors are, because they have to be. It's that versatility. And I don't. It feels like I'm asking you, how are you so damn good at it? It's one of those questions though. What do you think? I mean, give me 3 things, Bill, that you studied as an actor that you really could take and kind of bank on in terms of technique as a character actor.
Okay, so you had said this. I don't know if you said this on mic, but you said that my method as a teacher was to just throw material at you and sink or swim, right? Figure it out. And so that's basically how I learned. There was never been an acting teacher, except for one, my first teacher at Yale, Earl Gister. Now, remember, I had been performing since I was 10 years old. Now I'm in my mid-20s, and I do my first scene for him, and I'm thinking, I killed it, man. I'm going to be the star of the class, right? And he goes, "That was a brilliant imitation of acting." And I was, "What are you talking about?" Now, he used a word I had never heard before, believe it or not. He goes, "Well, you indicated the whole thing." I went, "Indicated? What?" He goes, "Yeah, you showed a lot of stuff, but you didn't do anything, you know." And so he just, boom, just the light went on in my head. And God bless Earl, he's since passed away, but he was a master, and we were very lucky to have him. But aside from that, I've had several acting teachers through the years. Nobody ever taught me shit. I was always kind of like, I know what I'm doing, you know. So in answer to your question, what actually taught me, besides that Earl day, to be how to be like pay attention to what actually is happening, you know, what you want, your objective and all that, is the work of the various playwrights. So I'm a writer, as you know, so I think in terms of what is the story being told, which gets me to my my book,
Yeah.
An Actor's Function, which is basically deals with, in the same way that you said, it's like, okay, you start with the material and what is the story, learn the playwright's intention, and then what is your function in the telling of the story, and try to do that with as much, you know, joie de vivre and creativity as possible.
Is this available on Amazon?
It is.
Okay, so it's An Actor's Function by
Yes.
William Mesnik.
Yes.
Amazon, guys, check it out. Mesnik is Mesnik. Okay, so I gotta tell you though, yeah, you set up especially because we did feel like it was okay. They're figuring out what our program is. When I went through here and I had you as a teacher, and I was in love with this idea because I was reading about the old actors, and you know, way back when they used to have to play for their supper, and you know, you start off as the spear holder in a company, and then you saw, you know, different Romeos and how, you know, you were basically being groomed in a company, and how they would memorize like, you know, 50 to 100 plays, because you would ask, okay, what would the king like to see tonight? And then, you know, okay, we'll spend the day rehearsing it, and then it'll be ready tomorrow night. And, you know, that was legitimately where acting started. But what I loved about you in particular was, I don't know if you remember this, I bombed so hard in a tech rehearsal. We were doing Laramie Project, and I was playing. I was pretending to look out my window. I was playing a 50 or 60-year-old. Do you remember
Father.
this?
Yeah, your father.
And I'm looking at this candlelight vigil, and so everybody's walking in a circle, and they had to stop when I said this particular line. And I remember we were in tech rehearsal, and I couldn't think of the fucking line. And everybody is just walking in a circle still. And I'm like, okay, breathe. Technique starts setting in, right? Breathe. And then I start saying the line in my head, and it would not come. And everybody's looking at me. And I remember the only time, and you weren't even pissed, you looked at me more in horror than in anger. But I remember everybody's walking, and I just go, line. And I remember you came from the corner, and you go, line. And you go, does anybody even have a fucking script still? And I remember it was like, and I had to literally get off of the stool I was sitting on and look at the fucking line. And I remember very, very, you know, we got through the scene. I was terrified because I was like, what if, fuck, this is a tech. We open like right around the corner. And I remember you said, Eric, I talked to you for a second. I said, oh shit. And you looked at me and you laughed. You went, you got lost, baby. And I was so terrified. But what I remember though was I was trying to learn different ways of learning lines, because I had heard so many different things. I tried doing something I'd heard Brando had done, which, if anybody's still listening, you never do anything.
Yeah, don't
Brando
follow
did.
Brando's example.
It was here though.
But that's another example of, you know, nobody can teach you. You know, Brando is Brando. I mean, yeah, he studied with Stella Adler, but
yeah,
he was always Brando.
What I learned was actually, and this is embarrassing, I didn't learn how to memorize lines until I got here.
Yeah.
And I've been doing theater in New York for, you know, like 4 years. And I remember it was using a recorder and recording the other lines,
Okay.
and then walking around and then listening to that
Like
recorder.
DiCaprio does in Once Upon a Time.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Hollywood.
And what I would do is I would walk to the Kodak Theater from here, and I knew that if I could still have a conversation while all of the other weird shit that was happening around me, and still focus, that I had them. And it got me to listen more, which was fascinating.
Well, you figured it out.
Well, yeah, but you created that, though. Because I don't know how a lot of other acting schools are ran, and I don't know.
Well, once again, this is a matter of your function, right? You needed, the people kept walking around in a circle until you were going to say that line, and they needed you. They depended on you to create this effect, right? Otherwise, the whole thing kind of goes on, remote. So that's a perfect example of, well, you just need to do it because it's not about you. It's about the whole thing.
I have to tell you, I think you would have been a very good stand-up.
Ugh.
And the reason why is because you wrote so much. I mean, you would work on stuff even not while you were teaching, but I remember in my eyes, like I said, it's so hard to have that discipline to act and to do this and to do that. But I remember I read one of your plays, and I'm not sure if we talked about this on here, if someone put it in here, though. Are any of your other plays available to the public?
Yeah, well, yes, I have a website.
Okay.
BillMesnik.com.
BillMesnik.com.
And there's a download section where you can download. I have 3 plays up on there.
Fantastic.
Well, and also, as you know, I'm a songwriter and a musician, so I have CDs that are also available. And the link to the podcast, which I did want to talk about, Stranger in Town, .podcastpeople.com, and then that's the website, and it's also available on iTunes, and it's called Dig This with the Splendid Bohemians, and it's basically it's a music website where me and my partner Rich Buckland talk about our musical obsessions, and it's fun.
Who is your favorite right now? I mean, who's on your record player? I should say.
This is
I know it varies.
really hard. But I'll talk in terms of the podcast. So the latest episode that we did is Rich has got this idea. He wants Frank Sinatra to be voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Really?
Yeah, so that's a big controversial kind of topic. And he opened, he put it on the Dig This Facebook page, and like a lot of people responded to it. Some yay, some nay. It's, what is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Is it even legitimate? Blah, blah, blah. And Rich makes the case that Sinatra needs to be in there. And I take not the other point of view, but what I said to him was, we can't cover the career of Sinatra. It's too big. Let's cover this one section where Sinatra did this album called Watertown, which was 1970, which was a real bomb. And he was trying to kind of adjust to the singer-songwriter thing that was going on. So he got Bob Gaudio of the Four Seasons to produce it. And it's this kind of downer song cycle about a guy whose wife left him and the kids, and he's stuck in this small town called Watertown. And it's a very kind of depressing, and it's the only time that he recorded an album without a live band. That's the only time.
Really?
And so I found that fascinating. I wanted to discuss this project of Watertown and this time when Sinatra was kind of between. He actually announced his retirement at the same time, which he never really totally retired, but he announced his retirement, and he tried to kind of go away for a while, but then he came back a couple of years later with Old Blue Eyes is Back. But that, so that's the kind of stuff. And then we play clips and we talk about, our obsessions. And
That's
our interests.
amazing. Yeah. Before I let you go, there's 2 questions I want to ask you. Okay. One, what is the ugliest audition that you can tell me? Yeah.
That I did?
That is to memory.
That's pretty easy because I still get flop sweat when I think about it. I was back in the day, I'm in New York. I used to read the trade paper. I didn't have an agent until I was 30, so I used to read the trade papers and look for the open call auditions. And there was an open call for, I think it was a dinner theater production of Guys and Dolls, and I was like, okay, I could do Guys and Dolls. I should be in that show, and I'm not really a musical guy, but I've done musicals. My first professional gig was a musical at the Kennedy Center based on a Franz Kafka novel called America.
Wow.
And, I got my equity card on that gig, and it was a big deal.
God, Kennedy Center.
Kennedy Center, and
wow.
there were some big people. Philip Kasnoff was the lead. He did the lead in Chess. And Caroline Cava, who was doing Three Penny Opera in Central Park, directed by Richard Foreman. So it was quite an impressive cast, and I was a brand new young actor and doing musicals. So I did musicals because I could sing, but I can't dance. So I can only do certain kinds of musicals. So on the trades it says, okay, Guys and Dolls, dinner theater. I had to learn a song. I said, I'll learn a song from the show. And I had to do it in one day. So I went to the Lincoln Center Library where you could take out tapes and records. And so I'm listening to the song, What's Happening at the Roxy? I'll tell you what's happening at the Roxy. Blah, 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 blah. Really dumb choice because there's a lot of words and it's like a rap song in the beginning. And I get into the room and I go, what's playing at the Roxy? And then my head goes blank. And I start pacing back and forth. What's playing at the Roxy? I'll tell you what's playing at the Roxy. And the sweat is pouring off me. And I'm like going back and forth. And I remember I had a Hawaiian shirt on and I was just, it was so ill-fated. And they were like, just stop. Right? And I went, I'm sorry. And I ran out. Man, nothing worse.
They stopped you?
Yeah. Yeah, nothing worse than Another one was for a television show that David Brenner, not David Brenner, David Steinberg, the stand-up comedian and director. He was directing a series. Faye Dunaway was doing a sitcom, and I had gotten a call to go in for that, and they called me onto the set, and there was a little room next to the set. And I had rehearsed this bit where I was going to do a pratfall, And so I go into this room, and there's like 10 people sitting in this tiny room, like a dressing room, and there's no room to do the pratfall. And I'm thinking, oh, fuck it. I rehearsed this thing. I'm going to do it anyway. So I do the pratfall, and my nose is on David Steinberg's shoe, right? No laugh. Nothing, right? And I had to get up off the floor, brush myself off, and they were like, thanks for coming in. Yeah. You take enough humiliation, you're grateful to get out.
I was going to say, you got to be fearless, though, at some point.
Well, the thing that I learned there is you have to adjust, to the room. And this is something that I'm sure as a stand-up comic, you're always doing. But so I had insisted because I had rehearsed this thing to death, and I knew I had this bit, and I knew it was fantastic. In a bigger room where there was some distance, it might have worked, but in this close quarters, it looked psychotic. And, and the fact that I stuck to my guns because I was, I'm not like I said, I'm not an improv guy. So, I like to have a firm footing on what I'm doing. And that's one of the things that I wish that I had taken some improv as a student and had a better, sort of laissez-faire attitude about, going with the flow, because I might have done better.
Okay. Last question. Your favorite moment as an actor and as a teacher?
Two separate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As an actor, well, there's been a lot of them. I've had some great experiences.
I mean, yeah, you know what it looks like behind a Broadway curtain. That's fucking huge. But
Yeah.
what...
Yeah, but I think one of the more satisfying moments that I had as an actor is I did a 5-6 month tour in Europe of King Lear, and this was a bus and truck kind of situation, very not expensive. We had 2 vans, we carried everything in the vans, and we went all through Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the Netherlands. And it was a great experience. Such a great play, as you know. And I'm playing Kent, and it's a great part.
Mm-hmm.
And in New York, we rehearsed in New York. And there's this one scene where he's on the heath and the wind's blowing, and he gives the ring to the messenger, and he goes, "Give this ring to Cordelia." Right? So he's trying to save Lear's life, and he says, "Get this ring and go find Cordelia." And we never rehearsed it because we had a limited time, and the guy who was playing Lear, who was also the director, he was like, "Oh, you got it. Well, just go." There were other scenes that needed more attention. So we're doing the play, and for the last scene, I notice Kent is just brokenhearted, howl, at the end where Lear is holding his, Cordelia, and then he dies, and it's you just like emotionally you should be a wreck, and Kent should be, and I just couldn't get there. And one day, about midway through the run, I said to the guy playing the messenger, I said, I hate that scene because we're standing up, the wind's blowing, and we're yelling at each other, And I said, let's try something, And I did this kind of on my own, which was I had a cloak. I said, let's go all the way to the lip of the stage. I'll put the cloak over the 2 of us, and we'll have an intimate conversation, and I'll give you the ring then, right? And so he said, sure, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah. So we did it. And that night, at the last scene, I just became unglued. So what I learned was, in the architecture, if you have a part that goes through the whole text, the architecture of building that performance, each piece needs to be observed and respected, In order to you got to build the bridge that gets you from the beginning to the end. And by taking care of that moment, I made the journey successfully.
Wow.
And so that was a very satisfying moment as an actor.
That's a learning moment, too.
Yeah.
My God.
So that was fantastic. As a teacher?
As a teacher. Because the one thing that I have to say right now, too, as we near the end of this, your success, especially with this school, I think is absolutely just. You were one of the best teachers I've ever had.
Thank you.
Sincerely. And it's just, from somebody that absolutely loved, lived, and breathed acting, you were a treasure, and I think you're a treasure to this place as well.
Thank you. Well, it's hard to answer that question because there have been many, moments. But I would say in general, what, and I don't only speak for myself, what we cherish as teachers are students like, Mutual Admiration Society, like you, who love what you're doing. You're passionate about what you're doing. You come every day with passion and energy and ideas and your souls. And as a teacher, that's what we want. That's what we want. We don't want to haul like Sisyphus a load of, shit up a hill who doesn't seem to want to be there. But part of our job is to give everyone free, open access to, us and what we have to give. And, the percentage of, the students that give us that joy is, it's not that large, it's a job like any other, except it's a job that we love, and it's a job that is creative. And there's thousands of examples of when I had breakthroughs with students that I didn't expect to, or someone like yourself that several in the course of our time together. So it's more a general question. I can't say that there's one. It's every time that the light goes on, that gives me a lot of joy. But we want a student who cares, who wants to be here, and this is their passion. That's really what we want.
It's good seeing you, man. I can't say thank you enough for doing this, Bill.
Oh, this has been fun.
Thanks, buddy.
Say you might lose your mind if you don't find the time to lose.
Alrighty, that was Bill Mesnik. I don't know. I can't say enough nice things about that guy. He's been an amazing teacher and an amazing friend, and I'm really grateful that he did the show. So, that said, you can check out all of Bill's stuff at billmesnik.com. Again, Mesnik is MESNIK, so billmesnik.com. Also, check out his podcast, Stranger in Town. So you go to billmesnik.com, and it's got links to all of his stuff. His podcast, strangerintown.podcastpeople.com. Check it out. That's it for me, guys. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Maxwell House is going down by the railroad tracks. Mama broke in glass by the railroad tracks. Don't matter.